if you run your Meta ads in a CBO, you might have seen at some point that Meta goes full in on an ad that has low ROAS and spends on it, whereas there are other ads in the account that are at a higher ROAS and which are just chilling and sitting there and not getting any spend. And you might have been thinking, okay, why Meta? Why do you spend on this bad ad so much when we have this ad which is at a way better ROAS and we can scale this ad? Now in this video I will show you a live example and why this actually happens and even why this actually makes sense. So here I have an ad account sorted by amount spent. Now here we have different ads running, and as you can see, the top spender right now, which spent in the last 30 days £2,000, is at a ROAS of 2.09. And by the way, what I'm gonna talk about also applies no matter if you spend 2,000 per month, 20,000 per month, or 200,000 per month. We have the same thing going on bigger accounts. The point here is that you might be wondering, okay, like this has a ROAS of 2 and got the majority of the ad spend, right? Like £2,000. Okay. Now here's an ad that is actually at a ROAS of 3. Why would Meta now go and spend on this ad, which is at a ROAS of 2, if we could actually spend on this ad, which is at a ROAS of 3? What's going on here? Because if all the spend would go on this one, we would have a higher ROAS, well, better spend, right? So this is the wrong way of thinking, and I will explain why this is wrong. You have to understand that Meta overall wants you to scale. Even the standard bidding system that is used on Meta is called highest volume, lowest cost, and to enable you to spend more. So it wants you to scale. Now, if you think about it, what actually enables you to scale? Well, first of all, the ad has to be resonating with lots of people, because otherwise you couldn't spend as much on the ad. And second of all, it has to convince everyone and do that very profitably. And this already leads me to the first point, because just because this one ad, for example, has a higher ROAS, or this one running at 2.4, 2.6, 2.3 point something, doesn't necessarily mean that this ad resonates with as many people. You have to understand that if you want to reallocate the ad spend of this ad, and that is, okay, here £2,000, if you want to reallocate it to ads here, let's say onto this ad, which has a ROAS of 3, you would have to essentially triple the ad spend of this ad. Now you have to ask yourself, and if you're running Facebook ads for a while, you already know what will happen. You have to ask yourself, okay, if you were to triple the ad spend of this ad, right? This is how we can think about it. If you were to triple it, would this still run at a ROAS of 3? And if you have some experience, you already know that's not the case. If we increase the budget, the ROAS tends to go down. The reason for that is that by forcing more ad spend on the same ad, you force Facebook to show it to an audience that is basically triple as big as your initial audience. Now the question is, will an audience that is 3 times as big as the initial audience resonate just as much as your ad as the initial audience that Facebook already optimized for? And the question is, of course not. The further you scale an ad, the less the ROAS usually gets. And that is because this bigger audience is just not as ideal and not resonating as the first people. Because Facebook always starts to target the people who are most likely to convert from an ad, and then goes over to the next likely audience and to the next likely audience, and it always gets less and less efficient, and the ROAS tends to go down as you spend more on the same ad. Now this is just one of the reasons. The other reason is that you have to see that here this ad, this really stands out, right? Because this has a ROAS of 3, the other one's like 2.4, okay, 2.25. This has a ROAS of 3. Why is this the case? You have to understand that Facebook, like the whole tracking system, is also responsible for this view that you have. But it doesn't mean that this ad is better or more efficient necessarily. Because if we look here at the frequencies, and this is also a very important indicator, you see that the frequency on this ad is way higher than the frequency on this or on this ad. Now remember what we said in the beginning, Facebook wants you to scale. But what happens if the frequency is pretty high? That means that this ad rather works like a retargeting ad. For the same amount of dollars spent on this ad, the same number of people see the ad 3 times. Whereas here, a bigger audience sees it, but only 1.8 times. This means that this ad is actually seen by way more people. And if you want to scale, that is the goal, because the higher frequency usually indicates that, okay, this goes to a warm audience. This warm audience is likely to convert soon. So we just bombard them with a higher density of ads in their feed so that they finally click on it and buy. And this leads to the high ROAS because those people were already on the brink of buying because they saw ads like this one, for example. So they were cold, they got to see this ad, and then they got to see this ad, and then they bought and converted. Now, does this mean that this ad is generally better? No, it's quite the opposite. It means that this ad is better, because even though it runs on a lower ROAS, many people actually see this ad first. This is the first touch point, obviously, because this is the ad that's getting the most ad spend, so this is their first touch point, at least for many people in the funnel. And then they see this ad and then they convert. But Facebook now counts only the last clicks. So obviously those ads that are rather for retargeting will have a higher ROAS, but it doesn't mean that they are better. Because in the end, this ad is the one that's actually carrying the whole account and nurturing the funnel and nurturing cold people. And then the other ads are just like, okay, now come, now buy, and then they buy. But it doesn't mean that it would work without these top spenders. If you would actually turn them off, chances are that the performance on the other ads would drop, because now like this one, which is working as a retargeting ad, suddenly has to go and do prospecting, and of course if you have tried that, if you force a bottom of funnel ad to like try and do prospecting, it just won't work. So that means if you run in a CBO and think, okay, like this ad has much better ROAS, this ad has much better ROAS, this one too, like actually what is Meta doing here? Let's just turn these ads off. If you do that, you will force Facebook to find other ads to spend on, and those ads didn't get the ad spend before for a reason. So they will get more ad spend, and likely this ad spend will actually break those ads because they were not able to spend the ad budget that you allocate to the budget at a higher ROAS. So this will get the ROAS further down, and then you need to downscale your campaign and your budget. And this is the reason why in general you should never turn off top performers, even if, let's say, the break-even ROAS would be 1.8 here, or like let's say the break-even ROAS is even 2. If the break-even ROAS is 2 and this is the top spender, don't turn it off, because you can see that other ads are also getting spent, and this one is actually nurturing the funnel, and then the other ones are converting it. Okay, perfectly, works fine, right? If you just go and start turning off top spenders because the ROAS is bad or because it's a bad ad, chances are that your whole performance will just completely collapse, because those ads were actually carrying the account and enabling you to launch the other ads that are actually getting the praise, so to say, for the performance, even though they don't do much. Now then you might be also wondering if you actually run some ads and they didn't spend at all. So let's go over here to the left side. So here are some ads they basically didn't spend anything at all, and you might be wondering, okay, like why does Facebook not at least like give them a chance? Well, that is because you have to understand that Facebook has a large database of ads that are working and not working. They are literally running all the meta ads that they have all the data. And when you launch that, and before you even spend on it, it analyzes, okay, does this ad even stand a chance to become one of the top performers? And then it goes and compares it to top performers across all possible niches, accounts, and within your niche and within your competitor ad accounts and everything. And then when it thinks, okay, no, actually not, then it will not spend on it. And also it does not mean that Meta makes a mistake when it decides to spend on your lower ROAS ads, like here, but it just means it already evaluated how your ads will perform and decided to spend your money most efficiently for scale. And this is why people say trust the algorithm. It's not just blind trust, but actually understanding what's going on, because many people try it and then they see, okay, this kind of doesn't make any sense to them. And then they are like, okay, do not trust the algorithm. Just use ABOs and force spend on these ads. Like, okay, ROAS 3, let's scale this. We can get it to a ROAS of 2.5, but more scale. But this would break the balance, because this is actually a retargeting ad. And then if you go and force more spend on it, chances are that you will empty your funnel faster than you will then these two ads are building it, and then your performance will also drop because now there's nobody anymore to retarget. So this is how it works, and this is why it almost always makes sense to trust Meta with spending. Now there will be also ads like this one where it actually even makes sense to turn it off, because you can see that, okay, like this is not one of the top spenders, but it got like almost 800 pounds of spend, but the ROAS is 1.37. But does that mean that the ad is overall better? Well, if it runs below the break-even ROAS and is losing you money on scale, like because in the end Meta is focusing on scale, but if it's losing you money on scale, this is not what you want to go for, obviously. So if something is just not profitable even anymore, you might consider switching it off and then letting the ad spend reallocate. Now, if your top spending ad is actually at that point and it's like break even or below break even, that's a tough decision, because on one hand, everything is true what I just said, it nurtures the funnel, and other ads are probably getting credit for what this ad actually lifts and how it carries the account. But at the same time, if it's like far from your break-even ROAS, I would really think, okay, what is my second best ad? What is my third best ad? Could the other ads take this ad spend, absorb it without much of a scale hit or like a performance hit? And if you think, okay, like the discrepancy between the ROAS of this top spender and then the other ads is high enough, and yes, the account could take the hit of taking out this ad, then you wanna do it. Because in the end, Facebook optimizes for scale, but it never knows what actually your profitable ROAS and your target ROAS is. So if your top spending ad, let's say this would be your top spending ad with a ROAS of 1.37, is way below break even, you actually want to turn it off. And maybe you will have to downscale a bit, but then at least you can make sure that you're running profitably again. So the decision framework is really, okay, first of all, trust Meta, but at the same time, what would happen if you turn off that ad that's spending a lot? Would your account overall do better or do worse? What other options does Meta have to spend this ad spend on if you would turn it off? And then by how much would you expect the ROAS drop if this budget gets redistributed to the other ads? This is exactly how you want to think when you decide what to keep on and what to turn off. Now, if you're not familiar with this way of running ads, here's a video where I explain in detail how it works and why it works. And that is a framework we use to scale many brands with performances like these, and these. Also, if you want someone to actually come in and help you to create ads that can actually get a lot of ad spend at a high ROAS, at a ROAS that is above your break even and at your target, then click the first link in the description, because this is exactly what I do for e-com brands. Keep scaling, bye.